You know that weird dance between hope and deja vu that happens whenever people whisper about Spyro 4? That sense that something's always maybe happening, but never officially real? Yeah, that's where we're at right now. Every few months, some trademark gets filed or a purple dragon shows up in a random Toys for Bob tweet, and the community lights up again like it's 2018 all over. But 5 years after Reignited Trilogy, we're still asking the same question. What's actually going on with Spyro 4? And honestly, that question says a lot about how weirdly fragile nostalgia-based franchises have become, because Spyro isn't just a mascot, he's one of the few survivors from the mid-90s wave of character platformers who hasn't fully reinvented himself. Mario evolved, Sonic went through an identity crisis and came out the other side, Crash got his weirdly meta rebirth with It's About Time, but Spyro has been sitting in a corner, quietly waiting for the industry to decide if there's room left for a purple dragon who doesn't shoot anyone. Let's start with the easy part, what we think we know. In early 2023, a bunch of odd hints started bubbling up. Toys for Bob, the studio behind Crash 4, tweeted a New Year's message featuring a small purple dragon emoji. Fans immediately clocked it, especially since this was right after Crash Team Rumble wrapped development, which meant their next big project was up in the air. Then there was the Activision acquisition by Microsoft, a massive corporate earthquake that threw every existing franchise's plans into question. Some insiders, mostly on fan forums and a few LinkedIn breadcrumbs, claimed Toys for Bob had quietly moved into pre-production on a new Spyro project before the deal finalised. Now, none of that has been confirmed, there's been no title reveal, no teaser, not even a leak of concept art, but the speculation hasn't slowed down because every move Toys for Bob makes seems to line up with the idea that something Spyro-shaped is lurking behind the curtain. A supposedly cancelled internal project, codenamed Project Phoenix, has come up in several community discussions. Some people think that was Spyro 4, frozen mid-development while Activision's priorities shifted towards Call of Duty support work. But here's the big scoop. Just last week, Toys for Bob quietly updated their website to tease their next game. Why is this important? Well, because the graphic they uploaded to represent this game is a purple, scale-textured box with a giant question mark in it. If you ask me, this is low-key confirmation. But unfortunately, until we get an official announcement, it's still just speculation. So yeah, nothing concrete, but when a studio famous for 2 mascot platformer revivals suddenly goes silent, and one of those mascots is sitting unaccounted for, it's not crazy to keep hoping. The real question is less, is Spyro 4 happening, and more, what would Spyro even be like in 2026? Because Reignited was a nostalgia trip, beautifully done, but more reconstruction than innovation. After that, there's a ceiling. You can't just remake Year of the Dragon again and call it a day. You've got to decide if Spyro is viable as a modern standalone character, or if he's only interesting when pressed through the filter of nostalgia. I mean, think about how Crash 4 handled this. It leaned all the way into meta commentary, the idea that the characters actually know that they're part of a reboot, a continuation of something ancient. It gave the game personality and self-awareness. Spyro could follow a similar route, but there's certainly a risk of it feeling too safe. The little purple dragon always thrived on innocence and exploration. His worlds weren't edgy or ironic, they were whimsical but sharp, built around tight level design rather than spectacle. The challenge now is how do you modernize that without burying it under cinematic bloat or open world fatigue? Games today have to be bigger, flashier, more content dense, but Spyro's best moments were all about precision and freedom. Gliding, flame breathing, collecting gems at your own pace. Translating that into a 2020s release is tricky. You either double down on stylized platforming, like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart did, or you reinvent the formula entirely, and that's where things really risk getting complicated. If we zoom out a bit, everything about Spyro's limbo makes sense from an industry perspective. Platformers are having a low-key renaissance right now. Mario Wonder, Sonic Superstars, Crash 4, but they're still financially risky. For a publisher, greenlighting Spyro 4 means banking on love for a character that most active gamers know from childhood rather than current relevance. And that is a gamble, unless of course you tie it to some sort of broader IP revival plan. Now, another thing worth mentioning, there was a lot of hype around the fact that Toys for Bob split off from Activision and went fully independent in early 2024. On the surface, this sounded, at least to me, like a pretty positive shift because it would give the company newfound autonomy and creative control over which projects they work on. No more having Activision reroute their staff to work on other projects like Call of Duty. What it does mean is that they're a smaller team now than during the Reignited or Crash 4 days, but nimble nonetheless, backed by investors like Double Black Capital to chase licensed IPs that they actually care about. However, here's the caveat. Let's not blow that freedom out of proportion. The reality of the matter is that Spyro, as an IP, is still owned by Activision, and in turn, Microsoft. So no matter how independent Toys for Bob might feel as a company, they're unfortunately still beholden to the corporate overlords at those companies when it comes to anything Spyro related. But hey, let's consider the silver lining here. If Spyro 4 is indeed in development, it's a huge win if Toys for Bob are the ones to be cooking it up, because passion like theirs could make all the difference. Sure, Activision still has ultimate control over the game, but if you ask me, it's far better than 100% of the project being developed in-house over at Activision HQ. So, the safest guess, based on rumours, if this game has been in the works over at Toys for Bob for a little while now, we could hopefully see a mid-2026 reveal, with one possibility being at the annual Xbox showcase. This would likely mean, if we're keeping our purple claws crossed here, that a late 2026, early 2027 launch window isn't out of the question. Let's just pray, of course, that there are no delays due to indie scale constraints. Here's where the speculation gets fun. If you look at where platformers are trending, a new Spyro would probably go semi-open world, but not Breath of the Wild huge. Something closer to Psychonauts 2, structured worlds with exploration, depth, and character-driven storytelling. The idea would be to make players feel like they're exploring interconnected realms again, not just running obstacle courses. And I'd say a more character-focused approach could work too. Hear me out. Imagine a Spyro game that finally digs into what being a dragon actually means, like his origins, his role in that weirdly rich magical ecosystem that they only ever really hinted at in the originals. You know, not everything has to go dark or emotional, but a slightly more mature tone without losing whimsy could work in a similar way to something like How to Train Your Dragon. If you think about how that movie kind of balanced humor with high-stakes mythic scenarios. I mean, maybe Hunter's personality evolves into something more dynamic. Maybe the villains are slightly less cartoonish and more self-aware. I mean, you could build on Reignited Trilogy's stunning art style, you know, vibrant, alive, and kind of almost Pixar-esque, but push it into next-gen animation territory. That's where Spyro could stand out again, being unapologetically colourful and charming in this modern era that seems to be obsessed with realism and grittiness. Now, a lot of people asking the question, where is Spyro 4, isn't just them wanting another game. It's about how much Spyro represents a different time in gaming culture, one where a sense of imagination and wonder mattered more than content pipelines. You know, when Reignited came out, it wasn't just a nostalgia trip. It reminded people that simplicity could still feel special. There's this unspoken emotional currency around Spyro. The whole IP and Spyro himself as a character is a symbol of creativity before corporate homogeny took over everything. So when the IP seemingly goes MIA and Spyro essentially disappears, even just figuratively, it feels like a small part of that era gets shelved too. It's not just about bringing back a mascot, it's about whether creativity that isn't monetized to death can still find a place in AAA gaming. And Spyro, ironically, has always been a weird little test case for that. So, what is going on with Spyro 4? The honest answer, probably something, probably soon, definitely secret, but there's enough smoke to believe fire exists, just maybe not enough to call it a blaze. As far as we can tell, it's not cancelled, but on the flip side, it's not confirmed either. It's just suspended in that frustrating liminal space between fan hope and corporate timing. But if it is coming, I hope it remembers what made Spyro feel unique in the first place. Not the collectibles, not the nostalgia, but the joy of gliding through a world that felt yours to explore. Spyro doesn't need reinvention so much as rediscovery. It's a chance to remind people that simplicity done well is still magic. And maybe that's the bigger takeaway here. Spyro's absence hurts because it reminds us us how rare earnest creativity has become in gaming's nostalgia-fueled landscape. We don't just want him back, we want what he stood for, and that's something worth holding out for, however long it takes. And with that being said, that about does it for this one today, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, smash that notification bell, and send this video to someone who definitely won't watch it. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.